Hello and welcome to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omar. Amidst the complete lockdown, media and internet blackout, and suspension of not only mobile cellular services but also landline phones are now blocked, news featuring out of Indian-held Kashmir portrays a grim picture, a picture of fear-gripped region where everywhere looks like a ghost town. So far, we have reports of at least 6 people injured in protests that erupted after the presidential decree on Monday removed Muslim-majority region's special status. A hospital in the main city of Srinagar had admitted 6 patients with gunshot wounds and other injuries caused by non-lethal weapons. But we have been able to get hold of one of the journalists from New Delhi for Frontline who was visiting Srinagar and surrounding areas. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about his trip there.
On the evening of 4th of August, I was in Srinagar, and in the daytime I had visited South Kashmir. I visited Anantnag, I visited Kulgam, and all of those were like ghost towns. You couldn't spot anyone in the road, and all along the highways the convoys were moving. Dozens and dozens of convoys were moving. In some of the army convoys, the sniper was atop the vehicle with his gun, positioning his gun as though it were already a war. And I met some of the leaders of National Conference, PDP, and none of them had any clues what is about to happen except for speculation, except some sinister foreboding. In the evening, when I was in Srinagar at a coffee shop in an area called Bagat, I get a call from my hotel manager that I need to vacate my hotel and that apparently the police had come and they had dictated so. I, expressed my disapproval. I said that my booking is still left for a few more days, so you cannot ask me to vacate at your will. But they said that the police have said that I have to vacate. When I asked them whether this directive was only for me, a journalist, or it was applicable to other, visitors as well, they refused to confirm. Before that, I'll just give you quickly an update on what exactly is happening in Kashmir, because a couple of hours ago, Shah Faisal, bureaucrat and politician, he has come out with a Facebook post. We don't know how he managed to do that, but he has written that there is absolute silence in the streets of Srinagar. No one can be spotted in the roads, and there were some stones pelting incidents reported from downtown, from some other interior places, Kulgam and all. But as of now, and he says that pregnant women are rushing to the hospital in anticipation to avoid further hassles, and a lot of people do not know that the special status is gone. So it's totally a city under siege.
That was Anando Bhakto, a journalist joining us from New Delhi, who had talked about in detail about his trip in the past few days in Jammu and Kashmir. We also spoke to Advocate Parvez Ahmed earlier on the phone, a senior member of the Hurriyat Conference, and he gave us details that very little was coming out because of the internet blackout from Jammu and Kashmir in terms of casualties, in terms of protests. It's just creating much more panic on this side of the border for those who have family and loved ones in Jammu and Kashmir. So before we get into the detail of what is happening, what are the legal challenges and now that the BJP government is facing after the revoking of Article 370 and the reaction from the world over as there is complete silence from Jammu and Kashmir. Let me introduce our guest who will be talking to us. We have with us, first of all, Dr. David Lowe, who is joining us from Liverpool, UK. He is an international law expert, a senior research fellow at Leeds Beckett University Law School. Welcome, Dr. David Lowe, and thank you for joining us. Also, let me introduce another guest who is joining us from New Delhi, Mr. Shabir Hussain, senior journalist and analyst, also editor of Kashmir Newsline. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hussain. Let me start with you, Dr. Lowe, talking about the very legality and trying to clarify for our viewers what the revoking of Article 370 means, and also what has also been passed by the Parliament now in India, the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir in 2 union territories. Could you help us understand the legality of this, what it changes the status of Jammu and Kashmir to now?
Yeah, this is quite a drastic move by the BJP party. I mean, I know, as far as I understand, it was in their manifesto to look at, incorporating Kashmir more into the Indian state. But this, for 70 years now, since 1949, under Article 370, it gave Kashmir special status. Now, the special status is, in effect, we could summarise as home rule. They could govern themselves. The only things that they couldn't look at was foreign policy, currency, and international communication. So, in effect, they virtually had autonomy. And of course, as we know from the 47-49, from that India-Pakistan war, and then post that, it's been an area that's been contentious, not just geographically, but politically, I think socially and economically. And, that region, as beautiful as it is to go there, we've had groups like the Kashmiri separatists. There's been conflict there for many, many years. And I think one of these issues is, and I can understand the concern, is split Kashmir into two, to Jammu and Kashmir. Is this now going to enable Indian citizens now to move north into the border? Are they then going to be able to purchase property? Because this is one issue of special status. It keeps that community as it is and has been for 70 years. And this is one fear, is then you'd have the Muslim community now become a minority community and just purely integrated into India. So I understand the tensions that are there. And as you said, it's one of these sad things with any partition. You'll have family both sides of that partition. And we've seen this over the years. Even in the UK, you look at Ireland from 1921, home rule, to then got full independence, but not full independence because there's 6 northern counties still under UK governance. And we know that in Ireland, for example, I use that as an example, similar to Kashmir, we've seen over the years violence and conflict between two communities, and which is the majority community. So we have to protect, and I think Kashmir must be protected. And I think there will be a degree of international condemnation, not only just from states, but hopefully from the UN and maybe the OIC, with 56 members in the UN, can put some diplomatic pressure on India to rethink this move.
Dr. Lowe, the OIC has come out with a statement, especially the contact group that met just yesterday to discuss the issue of Jammu and Kashmir and what the situation now sort of entails for the locals there. They've come out and said that they express great concern over India's Kashmir move, and have also said that what happens to the people of Kashmir will, of course, be a responsibility of the world, because the world is watching here. I want to ask you this in terms of the legality of it. Why is there a complete blackout? Why is there such an inactability in terms of not just only reporters, journalists cannot report from the region, there is no cellular service, there's no access to the internet? Is this in any way a violation of access to information? I mean, does this concern international organizations like the ICJ, the UN Security Council?
Yeah, well, it's strange. You see this move, and India is the largest democracy in the world, but this is not the action of a democratic state, and we can understand the fear. Now, there should be some form of communication. And I think I know why the Indian government have taken this move, because of the tensions that's existed over the years, to minimise any communication between various individuals or various groups in the region, to try and minimise any unrest. But I don't think this is particularly going to work, because people aren't silly. They know something is seriously wrong. As you said, maybe lines of communication, always the best to try and keep them open. Because even another line of communication could be to the citizens who are concerned in Kashmir from outside the world, saying, don't worry, we are taking steps. We will be there to try and help you. But that line of communication's gone. Whether it's an international human rights violation, that's a difficult one to say. But, everyone has the right to freedom of expression globally. You look at the UN Convention. We have rights of assembly, rights of protest. And that's what you should have in a democracy. But this is a strange paradox that India's got this largest democracy, except for one state where we've now got a total lockdown, and the fact that the rights that we've been there for 70 years have been taken away. I think there has got to be serious international condemnation, but not just condemnation, perhaps looking at what actions to take towards the BJP government at the moment.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hussain, let's come to you here. You are the editor of Kashmir Newsline. I was going through the website of Kashmir Newsline, and it seems like all the latest news is only up till August 3rd. Tell us a little about the situation of your reporters there in Srinagar and other parts of the Indian-occupied Kashmir. Is there any access at all, any information that you are able to acquire?
Thank you, Ayza. No, absolutely nothing. I'll tell you something. Being a journalist and an editor, I have my friends in administration, in bureaucracy, in police, but I've not been able to communicate with my family since Monday, the day they chose to completely snap the communication lines. And it's terrible. Whatever little reports are pouring in, they are not good. Thankfully, so far, we didn't have any loss of life. That's what we are getting to know through whatever meager sources we have at this point in time. This situation is extremely scary, and I guess it's going to get much scary than this. It's going to get scarier than this, for sure.
Mr. Hussain, help us. Mr. Hussain, sorry to interrupt you, but help us understand here. This is a move that Prime Minister Modi, in his various tweets in the last few days, have come out and said that this is what the people of Ladakh wanted, the bifurcation. He's made it sound like, and along with other leadership, senior leadership members of the BJP government, that this is something that is highly democratic. This is what the Kashmiris wanted, and this is for their benefit. They're celebrating. You can see on various Indian news channels them passing on sweets and saying this is the best thing that could have happened. Then why is it there a need to have complete radio silence as well as have such a heavy military build-up in this region? Is this unprecedented, considering it was already a highly militarized zone and now they've got additional 40,000 troops stationed there?
Absolutely. Let me try to elaborate on that. The first thing, they say that Jammu and Ladakh is happy with it. That's a huge lie. You know, the Pir Panjal and Chenab Valley, you see a massive troop build up in those areas too, the Muslim-dominated areas, and they are as unhappy and as dissentful of this move as the Kashmiris. And you have to also understand that Kargil observed a very strict shutdown yesterday. Kargil has more than half of Ladakh's population. So it's a huge lie. It's not just Kashmir, even half of Ladakh. It's just the Buddhist majority Leh district. That's all for it. Not Kargil. Kargil has more than half of population of the entire Ladakh region. So, and Muslims of Jammu are totally unhappy, especially those from Pir Panjal and Chenab Valley. You have to actually understand one thing, and which is very, very important. 370 was always on the agenda of BJP, even before coming to power. You know, through decades, these RSS subsidiaries and RSS and other Sangh Parivar, these offshoots, had been impressing upon Congress to do it. But Congress knew, because of their better understanding of international law and the legality of this whole issue, they knew they would have done it. Had it been a good step for even India, they would have done it way back, you know?
So why now then?
The thing is that, I'll tell you why. There was every likelihood they would have waited, and maybe waited for some more time and see if they could just garner some consensus. But because of, you have to understand that India's foreign policy and the domestic policy has been a disaster over the last few years. Modi has been bragging internationally that it has isolated Pakistan, but the truth is it's India that's internationally isolated. You know, India is, despite investing so much money into Afghanistan, unlike US and Japan, India is not a traditional donor. And first time post 47, you see India investing so heavily somewhere, and it was not. What we see is that it's not because of their love for Afghanistan or for Afghans.
You're saying it feels sidelined, and Pakistan is once again in the center of attention here when it comes to Afghan-Taliban peace talks with the US. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly, and it does not only hit India's ego. Okay. It also hits its interests, because from Afghanistan, whatever a large percentage of violence that we saw in Pakistan over the last 10, 11 years had its roots in Afghanistan. you know, and
Right.
India has used violence as a very strong bargaining chip against Pakistan. That has gone now.
Okay.
Also, the fact that Trump being Trump, Modi might have confided in him something, and he would have expected him to do it secretly rather than spell it out. And Trump just
So that's an interesting point.
spelled
Let me bring Lowe into this, Mr. Hussain. Hold that thought, Dr. Lowe. This Prime Minister Modi's move, as Mr. Hussain, you heard him saying that this could have waited, could have been done later. It was though always on the cards. It was in BJP's election manifesto that we will repeal and revoke Article 370 and 3035A. But do you think, considering U.S. President Donald Trump just came out and said twice already that he would be happy to mediate on Kashmir, could this have been Prime Minister Modi's preemptive strike in a way to sort of prevent President Trump from meddling in Kashmir at all?
Well, I don't want to sound too anti-President Trump, but I have some concerns if it's him as an individual doing mediation. It's such a complex area, and history shows that he has very little grasp of true international relations, and I'm not doing him down there. I'm trying to be as apolitical as possible. I think it's a good move, maybe the US, with those who are knowledgeable and understanding of the situation, could do mediation. I think that could be one way forward, but it needs some form of mediation in the area. As you said, maybe this move is to try and trigger putting that manifesto pledge into place a lot sooner than what we thought. Because there's been no period of progressive movement towards revoking Article 370 and put that manifesto pledge in place. It's just been an overnight introduction of revoking the article. And then, as you said, and we discussed before, we had that media blackout. That's got some sinister connotations to it. And we were hearing those. Families can't communicate with each other, be they north of the border or south of the border. It's a very worrying time, but we need some form of international communication, and it might be best to have a state that doesn't have a great stake in the interests of, I know it sounds awful, everyone should have an interest, but no direct interest in the resolution, some state somewhere who could bring the parties together and resolve this, because, to be honest, it's always the best way. Violence has never secured lasting peace.
Now, there are also concerns from around the world, from different various leaders, that this might just sort of be the trigger, like Pulwama was in February, between India and Pakistan, both nuclear-armed neighbors, that if they don't resolve their issues, something might just trigger, and Kashmir seems like a hotbed for it at the moment. Now, Prime Minister of Pakistan, he's recently, just yesterday, come out and said that considering these recent developments, Pakistan will do everything in approaching all relevant international forums to raise the sensitivity and the gravity of this issue. Tell us, what exactly could Pakistan do? What forums could it move that might have any effect in at least sort of opening a window into what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir, or at least putting some kind of stop to the tensions that are very quickly rising here between India and Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Imran Khan, and I understand totally where he's coming from. And I think that's one benefit of having an elected head of state in Pakistan at this moment with this happening. And yeah, looking at Imran Khan's past, looking at Imran Khan as a politician, he will try and resolve any peaceful solutions first, and I think that is a bonus, but should not be taken for granted by India. I think one thing we have to avoid is a war between Pakistan and India. There's always been tensions, and as you said, Kashmir has been one of those that's, if you like, we've seen some saber rattling between Pakistan and India before. So this is not the first time, but this seems a more serious step. So I think one is diplomatic moves, and I'm quite sure Imran Khan has had his diplomats and everyone trying to now go around to various states to try and gather some support for peaceful moves and to put some pressure on the Indian government, on the BJP government. As I said, UN is obviously the one, the first ports of call. And as I said before, one advantage of the UN is you've got the OIC states, the 56 OIC states in the UN. And it's not to use pressure in a bullying form. It's about compromise. It's about getting together and solving this solution. So I'm quite hopeful, understanding Imran Khan as I do, from the outside, if you like, looking in, that he will take every step possible, to avert any conflict with India and take a peaceful resolution. I'm sure it's also going to be in India's best interest to come to some form of resolution.
Now, there's also a lot of sifting through fake news, propaganda news that one has to go through in order to determine what exactly is unfolding here, even when it comes to what party heads are saying, both sides of the border. Mr. Hussain, let me ask you this. What do you make of how India media coverage is on the revoking of Article 370, the reaction, and then also what the situation is like in occupied Kashmir?
You see, the mainstream Indian media has always been totally partial, and especially when it comes to Kashmir. And now, after the emergence of Hindutva forces, this BJP government, we see that it's so heavily the Indian journalists, including some of the really senior names who would earlier wear this liberal label, and they had some semblance of being neutral about them. Even they have lost it. Indian media is totally a media that's owned by RSS, that's completely powered by RSS, and they cannot do anything that questions this government's line of action, whatever it is, whether it's foreign policy, whether it's Kashmir, whether it's the internal domestic policy. They have completely fallen in line. Whatever Modi does, whatever Ajit Doval, the national security advisor, does, whatever Amit Shah does, the home minister, they just fall in line with that. It's a pity the levels to what the Indian media has stooped, especially the mainstream media. They question the opposition in India rather than questioning the government. And what? Opposition almost doesn't exist in India because this government has come with a very heavy majority.
And is it because of the fear of repercussion from the government or the right-wing supporters? If they criticize the government, are they in fear of their reaction? That's why they stay silent?
Absolutely. This Indian government is worse than a martial law. Let me tell you that. You have to, if you are a very close observer of Indian media, you come to know the hell lot of planted stuff that you see both in electronic and in print media. It's sad. But let me pick up from where I left earlier, if you can allow me a few minutes, please.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Hussain.
Yeah. So I was talking about the problems that this government has and some really bad things that it has done for India and which it doesn't want to be covered. Its economy, this GDP has come down from 5 to 7. So which should have been a huge news in the Indian media. You don't see it anywhere because now, the mainstream media wouldn't have given it enough coverage, but they don't give it any coverage now because there's complete focus on Kashmir.
So you think this is a way of distracting from a failing economy?
Also, yes. One of the many things. This is also because there are so many problems. You see, if you meet people here in Delhi, common people, there are people who are totally swayed by BJP's this Hindutva agenda, this anti-Muslim, anti-minority agenda. But then there are people who also say that things are not happening. But because these people have been, they have completely exploited the sentiments of the people. They have been giving them fake promises, which have not been fulfilled. Perhaps this is the only promise they fulfilled, this Article 370.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hussain, for your input there, and also Dr. Lowe for joining us and throwing some light into this very complicated legal matter of revoking Article 370. But don't go away. We will be coming back with more conversations to be had on Indian occupied Kashmir right after this break. Welcome back. You're watching Newswire with me, Ayza Omar. Under discussion today is the situation as it evolves in Indian-occupied Kashmir after a rush presidential decree essentially scrapped the special status of the semi-autonomous state of Jammu and Kashmir. We are joined by Ms. Helena Seljert, human rights activist, joining us from Sweden. Also, we have with us from New York, Ms. Sameera Khan. She's an analyst and a foreign policy expert and a political scientist. And from London, we have Ms. Natalie Bennett, a politician and journalist of the Green Party of England and Wales. Welcome to all three of you to Newswire. I want to start with you, Helena. The situation here that we've seen and what we've learned from our guest, Mr. Shabir Hussain, who is the editor of Kashmir Newsline, who was just speaking to us, even his news website has not been able to be updated since August 3rd. There's also a question going around right now whether those reporting from the ground, wherever they are, when it comes to reporting on Kashmir, have been able to communicate easily and freely, considering there are allegations of social media sites clamping down on content that is related to Kashmir. Can you shed some light on this for us, please?
Yes, I will start with the situation in Kashmir. There is no information coming out, or rather very, very little information coming out. The curfew that has been imposed also includes a total information blackout, since it's over 60 hours, close to 70 hours now, that Kashmir has been totally locked down. People are not able to communicate. There has been a few people having some type of satellite phones in hospitals that have been sending out short notes and things, but what I have heard is that the curfew is really, really strict, and people are prohibited to walk freely and also gather in groups more than 4 people and things. It's a really severe situation on the ground, and journalists have been detained. Already before this happened, India prepared this by detaining journalists and also the mainstream leaders. Already before the resistant leaders they have been in house arrest or even jailed for many years, but now also the mainstream leaders are detained.
Right, but Helena, tell us about how the UN Special Rapporteur David Kay has asked Twitter about censorship on Kashmir-related content and how this content was even being monitored by Indian authorities and legal notices were being sent to Twitter.
Yes, this is not a new thing, because India has tried to target Kashmiri voices and Kashmiri supporters for a long period, and they have managed to convince Twitter that this is some type of legal issue. So I have, for example, received notes from Twitter that this is a legal matter under Indian law, and they have restricted my account, and they have done it to thousands of Kashmiri accounts as well. So Kashmiri voices are already very suppressed, and journalists have been targeted before, both on social media and on the ground. They have been trashed and even jailed.
Okay, so hold that thought, Ms. Helena. Let me bring in Ms. Sameera here. Can you shed some light on this? What is the need? What is the precedent that has been set here for a country that goes ahead and always says that they represent truly the voices of Kashmir as it is a part of India, and then gives them complete media silence? And not only that, but those who support the views of the Kashmiris who want an independent state, who want autonomy, they go and silence them. What is the precedent that has been set for them to go ahead and do this?
Well, first of all, India has been a Hindutva fascist state since inception. This isn't the first time they've unilaterally annexed independent back in 1947, when they changed the demographics in Jammu, I think they wiped out about 200 to 250,000 Muslims, and it changed the area from a Muslim majority state to a Hindu majority state. So ideology of the RSS, which right now is in power. And I think it's pretty clear that they don't really care about the Kashmiris or the Kashmiri voices. Well, censoring Kashmiri voices and censoring the voices of religious minorities has been the ideology of the Indian state since inception. I mean, it's been a fascist Hindutva state. Now, it would be a mistake to say otherwise. In the past, it's unilaterally annexed independent territories, carried out mass pogroms of minorities. One was in Jammu back in 1947, where they changed the demographics of the state from a Muslim majority one to a Hindu majority. So they're trying to do that again. And of course, they don't want Kashmiri speaking to the international media or the media getting light of this. So right now, not many people have a record like this, but the international community has turned a blind eye completely.
Okay, so we are seeing various leaders and a lot of British MPs, members of parliament, speak openly on this issue, writing letters, expressing concerns from their community members, and the fact that there is absolutely no access to information of what is unfolding. It really paints a horrid picture of what might turn out when finally that access is unsealed. What do you think how the world will react then, Sameera?
Well, at that point, it'll be too late to have done anything about it, and that's the biggest problem. But what's not being covered in the media is, the international aspect of it. Today, India's Home Minister Amit Shah, he declared that when he says Jammu and Kashmir, it also includes Azad Kashmir, which is Pakistani territory, and Aksai Chin, which is Chinese territory, as we all know, and they said that they would be deploying integrated battle groups to the Pakistani and Chinese borders. And the RSS is to start a nationwide campaign to annex Azad Kashmir and Aksai Chin. So what we have here is one belligerent nuclear power threatening two other nuclear powers, and radio silence from the global activist community. And they're the ones who can really get the ball rolling here.
We are looking at it potentially a very huge conflict about to unfold. I mean, we're talking about two nuclear-armed states. The UN Security Council, the ICJ, other world leaders. This silence might just cost a huge regional instability, considering that the West is pretty much interested, the US is interested in withdrawing from Afghanistan. Then, Ms. Sameera, do you think that some back channel talks or something is going on right now that might finally bring the pressure down?
Well, China's involvement makes things a lot trickier. And now when people hear fighting between India and Pakistan over Kashmir, they're sort of desensitized to it. But now when they hear that India is literally threatening China, they might be compelled to get involved. The UN might be compelled to get involved. So that's the benefit to that. Unfortunately, on the human rights perspective, I can't tell you what's going to happen because everything is censored.
Everything is censored. Okay, so we have Ms. Natalie, tell us about this world condemnation from leaders that is just absolutely barely coming out. But what we have seen from the UK is several members of parliament have written to the Foreign Secretary, the Secretary of State, whether it was Paula Sharaf or Mohammed Yassin or Andrew Griffiths, Richard Burgon. They've all said the same thing, that they are concerned about those in Jammu and Kashmir right now, where there is no access to information, no contact with loved ones of those residents, Kashmiri residents right now in the UK. Do you think this kind of concern is unprecedented within the parliament? And also, what does your party have to say about this, and what moves are they ready to make to highlight the issue?
Well, I think think there's grave concern. I mean, I'm based in Sheffield, where there are many residents from Kashmiri background, and I know that there's really big concerns. And in British politics, of course, at the moment there is a great deal of focus on the issue of Brexit, and that's swallowing up most of the oxygen that's available. But I think I'm very happy to call on our Foreign Secretary to make some statements here to really send a message. Respecting human rights and democracy and having transparency so that there's an awareness of what's going on is obviously absolutely crucial. This is an issue that the Green Party's been working on for many years. If we go back to 2007, our then MEP for London, Jean Lambert, she actually visited the Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir when he came to Europe, and was very much focusing on the desire for the political space of the people of Kashmir to move forward peacefully. And if we come forward to 2015, our Green MP, Caroline Lucas, was signing early day motions in the British Parliament, particularly one focused on the visit of Narendra Modi in that year to the UK, saying that the British government should be raising the issue of Kashmir and pressing to work with the people of Kashmir itself to end the decades of the human rights abuses, animosity, aggression and violence. So many people have died, so many people have suffered. The world needs to send a very clear message that what has just happened is not the way forward. We have to start with respecting human rights and self-determination.
But Natalie, what would it take within the parliament? What would it take in terms of how many numbers, how many letters, how many votes? What would it take for the government of England to do something, for the government of UK to do something about it effectively in terms of whether it's sanctions or a condemnation, a strong statement, a warning, for this to stop?
Well, I mean, one of the difficulties at the moment is we are on a long parliamentary recess, so Parliament won't be back until the start of September. But that doesn't mean, of course, that MPs can't put pressure on the government, and indeed constituents within the UK can put pressure on their MPs. So what I would say, I have a saying that politics should be what you do, not have done to you. So anyone who's concerned about this situation, I'd very much encourage them to write to their MP, to write to the Foreign Secretary and call for action. And all of those things collectively can have an impact. As I said, with Brexit, a huge amount of our oxygen is being swallowed up at the moment by that. But, it really is important that we keep, there's a lot of talk of people who are calling for Brexit, something that I'm very much opposed to, talking about a global Britain. Mm-hmm. If we are Britain out there operating in the world, we should be a Britain that's really standing up for human rights and democracy and self-determination. While, of course, also we need to be saying, as the UN is saying, that we need to see calm in this situation. It's really important that this is resolved peacefully.
All right. And Sameera, I know you've said that there has been global silence. World leaders have turned a blind eye to Kashmir historically also, and even now don't seem to be doing much. But when China's spokesperson, foreign ministry spokesperson comes out and says that, and I'll just read out her statement, the recent unilateral revision of domestic laws by the Indian side continues to undermine China's territorial sovereignty, which is unacceptable and will not have any effect. So what does this mean to you, considering just 2 years ago, there was a major escalation, just a few months ago, there was a major escalation. Is there something that China could do, make a move? Is it possible that they're on track for it right now that might bring a stop to what is happening here in Indian-occupied Kashmir?
Absolutely. China is one of the strongest military powers in the world. The last time India and China fought a large war was in 1962. And despite India being armed by the US, UK, USSR, China still won and lost. And India lost a lot of territory to China. So India is very afraid of what China can possibly do. The thing is, what's important right now is to draw comparisons to Palestine, Palestine comparisons, and then maybe the global activist community will get involved and initiate a sort of boycott, divestment, sanctions movement similar to the one initiated against Israel to raise awareness on the issue and stop India from committing all of these human rights atrocities and maybe prevent the total annexation of the territory.
And Helena, something that just said here, I wanted to bring this point earlier also about this, that Jammu and Kashmir is maybe becoming another Palestine. This issue is becoming another picture of what we have seen for decades happening between Israel and Palestine.
Yes, I actually wanted to say something there because I totally agree with Sameera. This is not something that started yesterday. It's been going on for a long period. But now we face a situation that can become India is on the path to colonize Kashmir, occupied Kashmir, and this is a grave situation, and we can very much speak about this to draw attention to the situation, because also, like Sameera said, the issue has been so completely forgotten, even if it's as long as Palestine, it's been completely blank for people. People don't know about the issue, but we need to push this, and we need to tell what can happen if we don't try to stop it at this point. And I also agree that it's important to take it to politicians and to international organizations, to media, of course. We are facing a situation where Indian media is like a war room. They are beating the war drums all the time, and basically are calling for extermination of Kashmiris without anyone doing anything. I mean, Kashmiri voices are silenced online, but those voices calling for extermination of Kashmir are still there, and they are sitting in primetime TV and speak for India.
Sitting on primetime TV, that's a really good point there. Ms. Sameera and Ms. Natalie, I'm sorry, I'll have to bring this conversation to an end. We've run out of time, but thank you for giving us your insight on this situation, that as it evolves, we will be bringing you updates from Indus News, but from Newswire, that's all the time we have. Till next time, goodbye.